What is good, homies? This is Chris from the Small Hat Crew. Today I'm covering Black. We've already gone over the Rags to Riches story that was Blue. We also covered how Purple started out really good, was just straight up neglected. God, I've never seen a color be as abused as Purple was. Bandai took the belt to Purple. It was ridiculous, but they did eventually redeem themselves and Purple became best color. And we are now covering today, by popular demand, Black. Black was by far the most requested color, so that's what I'm doing today. That means we are officially at the halfway point. That's 3 of the 6 colors tackled. OPO1 did not introduce Black. OPO1 was just red, green, blue, and purple. After OPO1, we received a new structure deck, I believe it was STO5, and it introduces our brand new leader, Sakazuki. Sakazuki, very I want to say he was it's not even, he was bad. He was bad on release. You know, you tapped 3 Dawn, discarded a card, and then he would pop a 0. So pretty much he never did, there was never going to be a turn where he did anything on his own. He always required that another moving part be on the board or in your hand or something. And then the main thing about him too was that usually you'd have to play a card from your hand to get the cost down to 0, and then you have to discard another card from your hand to be able to pop whatever you lower to 0. So it was a lot of investment. And honestly, he's not the worst. If OPO2 didn't come out with another Black leader, Sakazuki would have probably been good enough, you know? But anyway, we're going to jump right into it. So the stage, because the strategy, you can always figure out what a deck wants to do based on what their stage is telling you to do. The stage is on play minus cost of a character by 1, and then you can tap it every single turn to lower by 1 again. So here we're seeing cost manipulation. So Black wants to bring things down into a range that it can then destroy it with a card effect. Notable cards from this structure deck. He didn't really see play immediately, but he is still worth mentioning. You just tap him, discard a card, and you pop something. We're seeing the trend here. So we've seen Sakazuki takes a discard to pop something, so does Garp. So we're seeing that Black's destruction, Red's is always kind of just on play or attack, or it doesn't take any additional investment for Red to pop something, whereas for Black it does. For Black you usually have to go, it's a 1-for-1, so you usually have to break even. And then we see our next card, 5-cost Smoker was another notable card from here. 5-cost Smoker was really good into Red, specifically Zoro, because Zoro did not have a way to take Smoker off the board, because they couldn't jet pistol him, for example. So you always knew that Smoker was guaranteed to make it to the next turn, and then Zoro also didn't really play blockers. So Smoker, if he hit the board, he was guaranteed taking 2 life off them the next turn. So that's what his strength was. He eventually fell out of favor. He didn't have counter. The last notable card, or actually that's not true. Our last notable character from this deck, and that is 2K Tashigi. She's a 2K and she also has utility. She's a decently sized body, and you can see she taps herself to lower something within the range to pop it with your Garp, for example, or your Sakazuki leader. I will say an honorable mention, this card never really did see play, but it's a card that I've always been a very big fan of, and if I ever play anything with Black, I just don't really care for Black as a color, but because I just think it's boring. I think it's good in the most boring, uninspired way. It's just efficient. I don't really, but if I ever were to run Black, Lord knows I would be playing Greater Option. Oh my god, this card is, it's a 1 cost, replaces itself in hand because it draws a card. You don't even need a target on the field, so worst case scenario, you can always just pitch it off to draw another card, and then it lowers something by 2. And then the trigger is very mid, not gonna lie. But regardless, this is a stepping stone. This is a moving part, because most of Black's cost reduction, a lot of it doesn't do anything unless you have another card that says pop something. Whereas Greater Option was one of the few cards where even if there was nothing, if you didn't have a way to pop something, you could still play it just to draw a card, and then who knows, maybe even draw into a card that takes advantage of that cost reduction. Counter event. This is going to be the last notable card from this structured deck. Impact Wave was basically Red Hawk. It was basically Red Hawk, but it was a slightly worse Red Hawk because like for example, if your opponent like played a Zoro and swung at you with it, you couldn't pop the Zoro. It can only pop active characters, so you could play around it to an extent. But then with that being said, so that's STO5. We're seeing we now have our brand new color, and the identity that we're looking at here is cost reduction, destruction, can't be KO'd by card effects, and that is essentially it. So now we're moving over into OPO2. And this is where Black is actually like doing something. So we have our new leaders. We have Red Black Garp. My god, let me tell you, when this leader was first revealed, oh my god, the hype that me and my friends had for him. we really thought that he was gonna like break the game. Like, okay, that's exaggeration or hyperbole. We didn't think he was gonna break the game, but we thought he'd be really good. And I really thought I was gonna be maining this leader in OPO2. No, that was not the case at all. So the problem with Garp was that Black wants to pop things based on cost, Red wants to pop things based on power. So the two colors inherently are clashing with each other. There's no synergy there, and pretty much if you're playing a red card or a black card, they're never going to do anything that benefits each other in any way. Like, you can have an Otama and it's not going to do anything for your Sakazuki, or you could have like a Suru in hand and it's not going to do anything for like a Robin, for example. And then another problem with him was that his cost reduction, that ability is so good, but for whatever random reason, it has an arbitrary cap on it. It just can't touch anything above a 7. So an 8 cost character hits the board. If you don't have a Suru, if you don't have another card in hand to lower that card down from 9 to 7, it's over. Like, that body is going to be sticking to the board unless you can like find a way to beat over it or something. God forbid they put a 10. If they put a 10, you need 2 cards to try to get it down. But yeah, that was great. I haven't given up on him though, I will say. I have been experimenting with him. I am in the kitchen cooking up for Garp right now. And I have high hopes for him. Well, I don't have high hopes. I have hopes. I don't really have hopes. He exists. And I don't think he's terrible by any means. So sooner or later, expect a Garp video on this channel, because I think he has potential. I still do. That could be my cope, but I have faith in Garp. Our other leader was Z. I covered him in our purple video, but you know, just briefly touching on him for people that haven't seen that. Z was a leader. He was competent into most matchups, but the reason that he was bad was because on his introduction, it's OPO2, and in OPO2, Zoro is a top 3 deck, and Zoro versus Z might be the worst matchup in One Piece. It has to be like 90-10 in Zoro's favor. Like, Z just cannot win that matchup, no matter what. It is so free. If you were ever gonna go to an event, you would never bet it on Z, because with how popular Zoro was, because not only was Zoro just a top 3 deck, the deck is also dirt cheap to build, and it's also really good. So you were going to run into a Zoro, and if you ever did, that was the end of your run. You were going to be X1 at that point. Like, God, it's just, you're now X1, and then you're probably going to run into another Zoro. At that point, you're X2. Like, and then also going X1 that early in like the tournament, now the opponent could even be a bad tiebreaker, so you're probably not going to top. Like, that was Z's problem. Z's Achilles heel was the fact that Zoro exists. And there's a lot of bad matchups where, like, if you play it just right, you might win it. That just was not, like, Z, like, you just were not winning that matchup. It was so bad. And anybody who's going to be in the comment section like, well, I won on the simulator against a Zoro a couple times, that doesn't mean anything. It literally does not. Like, that matchup is abysmal. And that's just the fact. Like, that's the reality of it. We'll go ahead and move on to our final leader of the set. And this is our mono black leader in Smoker. Smoker was incredibly good for the reason that that Z was very bad. Smoker can just minus a character by 1 cost. Zoro, like 90% of the characters in Zoro are 1 cost characters. So what that would mean is Smoker would lower them to 0, and now for 1 Dawn, Smoker would be able to swing for the magic number, aka 7k, into the opposing leader, aka Zoro. So that was another really big thing it had going for it. And then this is the leader I was referring to where I said, like, maybe if Smoker didn't exist, there could have been a reality where Sakazuki saw play. But Smoker does exist, so that's not even, like, worth discussing at this point. I will say Sakazuki did have one top. And we did get our, we did get him on the channel. We did get the deck list. And we did get the interview. To this day, I still can't believe he did it. I'm gonna be honest. I still can't believe he did it, but regardless, because of him, Sakazuki does at the very least have a top to his name. We'll now move into the actual cards introduced by OPO2. So, we have 3-cost Kobe. This card was so insanely good. It was an on-play that just popped something. It did take a card out of your hand to do it, but at this point in time, it is some of the only on-play destruction that exists. At this point, we've just moved into OPO2. Red has just gained their first on-play pop with Vista. But Vista only hits 3Ks and lower. This card, Kobe is hitting everything. If you have like a Suru, Kobe's now hitting 5-cost characters. I mean, Kobe has the potential to be popping up to 7K. After Kobe, our next card is Kuzan, 4-cost Kuzan. Only bad thing about this card was he had no counter. I don't understand why he didn't have counter either, considering there's another card introduced in this same set that is so much better than him that had no business having counter, and it does. But for whatever reason, Kuzan was the one that got the downside of having no counter. So if he was in your hand, he didn't do anything, but because you play him and draw a card, he was a +1, so that's obviously good. And also, he'd replace himself, so maybe you would draw into a card that did have counter. Also, Kuzan being on the board was such a big threat. Like, if he ever hit the board, it was your opponent's, like, #1 priority to remove him. Because if they did not, any big body that they have established on the board probably is not going to survive. Because Kuzan would just lower it down into a range where it would get popped by something insignificant. Now we move on to Borsalino. This is the card I was referring to when I said he had no business having counter. This card was way too good. He was way too good to be having counter. I don't understand to this day why. He is essentially on the opponent's turn. He is vanilla stats. He is a vanilla blocker that can't be killed by card effects that also has counter. Like, why? Literally, why? I don't understand what happened here. Regardless, this card is a black staple, and I really thought would go on to see play until the ends of time, but power creep is a thing, and I guess we're already at that point. We're only in OPO4, but we're already there. Borsalino, an amazing card, and I think if you are a black deck that is not Rebecca, you're playing this card. We also see Sakazuki. Sakazuki's coming out. He is just like Kobe and just like Sakazuki leader. Discard a card, pop a card. He pops a 5 and lower. He was just bit Kobe. He had no counter. This is one of the problems that Black kind of had, was a lot of their good cards just did not have counter. So they could kind of break in your hand. But because Black also discards for cost, it wasn't even the worst thing in the world because, you know, like if you had like a Sakazuki that was dead in your hand, you could pitch it off a Kobe or like another Sakazuki or something. So at least they served as discard fodder. We also had 10-cost Kuzan. Black got one of the secrets of the set. 10-cost Kuzan was a win condition. If 10-cost Kuzan stuck to the board, you kind of just won the game. Like, it was to the extent that this was Z's win condition. Z was so desperate to try to ramp the 10 Dawn to put 10-cost Kuzan on the board, because if Kuzan did stick to the board, if he hit the board, they would win the game. The problem was you only have 4 life, so getting 2 10 Dawn and closing the game out within that 4 Dawn, it's feasible in like a lot of matchups. It's not happening against Zoro. It's too slow. But that was the strength of Kuzan. He would lower everything by 5. So literally everything on the opponent's board is now like dying to a Kobe, for example. Like if they have an 8-cost character, Kobe's popping it. If they have a 10-cost character, all you need is a Suru and now Kobe's popping it. A Suru, a Tashigi, like for such little investment, you're now able to remove the biggest threats just because of this lingering effect. We also move into our 2Ks. I've mentioned her a lot, but Suru is like probably one of the best cards in Black. If she is in your hand, she is basically Black's Otama. You put her on the board, lower something by 2, and you pop something. Now she's not as good as Otama because Otama just lowers something by 2k power, and then you just like swing at it with your leader or something. She's removal in 2 different ways. There's combat, and then there's effect destruction. Suru she requires you to have another card in your hand or on the field that can take advantage of the cost reduction, otherwise she doesn't do anything. But regardless, she was an enabler, and she made it so much simpler. Like, you could put a giant body on the board thinking it was safe, and if they had, you would just kind of have to put them on having the Suru, because if they had the Suru, you would have now just wasted your turn, because whatever you put on the board is just going to get popped. The other 2K is Garp. This was one where I want to say 9 times out of 10, he is just a 2K. But in certain matchups, like against Zoro, for example, you put him on the board, and then you could pop like a Nami, for example, or like a Sunny, or whatever other nonsense they're putting on the board. So he was kind of matchup dependent. Or if you were playing Red Black Garp, for example, this man was popping everything and anything. Like, oh my god. And then I will make a few notable mentions here. We have Ice Age. This is a card that everybody thought would be good because it's for 1 dot, lower something by 5. This card doesn't do anything though, essentially. This card, like, if you, like, I've mentioned it before with all the other cost reduction, if you don't have like another card that can take advantage of it, the card doesn't do anything. So this is, like, at least with Greater Option, you could play it and draw another card. This card wouldn't do anything. This card would literally just be a brick in your hand. It was a terrible top deck. Sometimes lowering something by 5 was just overkill. You usually never need it to go that deep. Like, it was just too much. And then also, like, you know, it's an event, so it doesn't have counter or anything. Like, it literally is just a brick in your hand. And I think in a reality where maybe if Smoker wasn't a leader and Sakazuki saw play, maybe Ice Age could have potentially seen play. But with a leader like Smoker existing, Sakazuki he basically doesn't exist. So you never need something to be lowered by 5. It's just, like I said, it's overkill. Anyway, we are in the meta. It is a red dominated meta. We have a new leader in Whitebeard, and it's crazy. So Black almost feels like it was a direct response to Red. It almost feels like Bandai recognized how destruction heavy Red was and wanted to introduce a counter. For whatever reason though, like, while Black on paper would counter Red, in practice they just don't. It's like, you would think that between them being able to pop all of Red's like bodies, and between Red not being able to like jet pistol your Borsalino, for example, you would think that like Black would just dominate and just destroy Red, but they just didn't. It just didn't for whatever. Red was so good that they just didn't care was the thing. They would like Otama the Borsalino and swing, and now Borsalino no longer is doing anything. And then also it's just like Whitebeard, Black. One of Black's like issues that they were facing was because they just could not close out games against Whitebeard because he had so much counter. He had, between Radical Beams, Guard Points, and 2Ks, Black was never swinging big enough to actually be able to kill Whitebeard. And we're kind of gonna like see that come up a bit in OPO3. But yeah, the best color was Red now. The best leader was Whitebeard, and and Black as a color just did nothing that Whitebeard cared about. So it was kind of irrelevant. Smoker was a really good leader. He did get tops. But yeah, you know, like in a Whitebeard meta, he's only gonna get so many. You know, like he didn't get too many. But you know, when Whitebeard's winning every event he enters, you know, that's kind of to be expected. So it's not even like anything against Black specifically. That was just like power creep. Whitebeard was an OPO2 leader that had the power of like an OPO4 leader, and we can say that and quite literally mean it, considering an OPO4 Whitebeard is still the best deck. Anyway, now we move on to OPO3, and we have our new leaders in Rob Lucci. This is what I was referring to when I said that we're gonna see this addressed, like Black not being able to close out games against Whitebeard. Rob Lucci was supposed to be the answer to that, and he essentially was too, much more so like over in Asia. Because in North America, he didn't, like, Lucci definitely topped. He got his tops, but but like nothing compared to Whitebeard. And again, that's to be expected because Whitebeard was basically a tier 0. Like, he was basically a tier 0 deck. So Rob Lucci was supposed to be... Rob Lucci basically like invalidated Smoker. I still, to this day, I believe that Smoker is the better black leader, but in a Whitebeard meta, Rob Lucci has the Whitebeard killing leader ability. Like, you could attempt a giant swing into Whitebeard, pull all the counter out of his hand, and then if you destroyed something, discard 2, restand Rob Lucci, and you can swing again and actually kill him. Because what are the odds that he can counter out of like a giant attack twice in one turn, you know? And then our other black leader was Black Yellow Big Mom. This is one leader I won't even pretend to like know about or speak on, because she never did anything. I will say there's another YouTuber named VV Theory. I'm pretty sure that I don't know if it's still the case, but I know he at least mained her at one point and saw some success with her. You know, nothing on like a large scale, but I mean, it's if she's at least winning a local, there has to be some amount of competency there, I would imagine. But she's unexplored, so couldn't even really say what her weakness is. Like, I don't even think people attempted. I will say, I think one of the things she did have going against her was that she is a big mom that exists while there is a yellow big mom, and I think that was just a better character. But also, like, her having access to the yellow color pool, like, when Katakuri exists as a leader, and Katakuri is Yellow's best leader in OPO3, and that could be like up for debate as to, because I could see the argument for like Yellow Big Mom being the best yellow leader, but as far as on paper and data and results and tops, it's Katakuri. It's not even close. It couldn't be any further even. So I think that's also one of the problems she had. I feel like if I had to speculate as to what her problem was, I really would say it's probably because I think that there was already a better Big Mom and Yellow Big Mom, and then if you're going to be playing Yellow Big Mom, realistically you should probably just be playing Katakuri, and if you're going to be playing her for the black, then I would imagine in a Whitebeard meta, you should just be playing Rob Lucci, because he is the Whitebeard killer. So that's, if I had to speculate, that's what I think her problem was, because she never did anything, and it's hard to say why that is. Anyway, so moving on to the actual cards introduced in OPO3, we have a brand new archetype in CP9, or I guess just CP in general. Rob Lucci was the CP9 leader, and he gained a searcher almost immediately, so he was obviously going to be more consistent. Also, the cards that spanned him was searching. There was a 3-cost Fukuro, so this was basically a mini Borsalino. We've already talked about why Borsalino was so good. Fukuro was just he was a 3-cost body that you could just stick to the board, and you knew he was never going to die. He wasn't going to die to anything outside of blue, like using 3,000 worlds on him. And I don't even know if that's like a play you would even want to make. That's 4 cost on a 3-cost character. Fukuro was amazing, and it's funny, like, of all the black cards gained in OPO3, like, they even gained like a new giant body. I genuinely believe Fukuro was the best CP9 character they gained in OPO3. We also gained Kaku. Kaku was basically Kobe, but you wouldn't discard for him. He was pretty good. Or I guess I was gonna say pretty good, but he was a good card. We also gained Bluno. He would basically float into everything. He could float into Khalifa. He could float into a 4-cost vanilla Kumadori from the discard pile. He could float back into Fukuros. He was just a big blocker, and he didn't care how he died. He didn't have to like get destroyed by combat. Like, if he died, he was going to float. That was the strength there. And then they gained a 2K in Khalifa, and she is essentially their Suru. So there is more cost reduction on 2Ks. So if Rob Lucci really wanted to, he could play a total of 12 2K solid lore by 2 cost. And that's it for Rob Lucci for the most part. There is also, God, So there's an event called Air Door. There were two ways you could build Rob Lucci. It was either you played Air Door or you didn't. My God, Air Door had to be the most. It was like the most high roll anything happening in all of One Piece. Like, it would play a character off the top of your deck, but my God, if it whiffed, you probably just lost the game. It was the most punishing whiff to happen in all of One Piece. It was the most expensive whiff to happen in all of One Piece. If you played this card, you probably just lost your turn if it whiffed. Like, oh my God. And then also it was kind of like, there's a lot of variance. There's the potential to high roll. It, like, you could potentially maybe cheat out a Kaku for 4 Dawn and pop something. But if you if you whiffed, it was just over. Like, oh my God. There was also Tempest Kick. This was another card. I just realized between all of CP9's events, all of them are text. None of them were staple. Air Door was either you played it or you didn't. Tempest Kick is another one of those cards. You either played it or you didn't. It was just removal. And then there was also 6 King Pistol. This was just a 0 cost event. At this point, Black has one. Red is getting theirs in OP04. Purple already got theirs. Blue got theirs. Green's getting theirs in OP05. But yeah, it's just a 0 cost event. It's a good card, especially because, like I mentioned before, how Black, one of the issues they had was that they just had so much non-counter. This was a card that could, you know, try to make some use of that. You know, if you had dead Sakazukis in your hand, you could potentially use a 0 cost event, pitch it, and just save something, or prevent yourself from taking a life. But that was only one of the archetypes of this set. The other one was them expanding upon the Navy archetype. So in this set, we gain 2 cost brand new. This is Navy getting their Searcher, but then we also gain 8 cost Isho. So Isho was such a force. Like, if you were a good player and you ever played against Black, you had to play with Isho in mind. So you'd have to counter, just to avoid your hand hitting 6. You know, you would have to do everything within your power to make sure that because essentially, if you kept your hand below 6, not only did Isho not get to, you know, pull two random cards out of your hand, the opponent's picking, like, you don't even get to choose them. But also, if they weren't going to get the discard, they may just not play him. And that just means that there's a giant body that you don't have to deal with on the board. So, Isho just existing kind of changed how you had to play against Black moving forward from that point. And then also, it's a target to search off of brand new. And also, it's another card that I'm sure Sakazuki Leader was very happy exist, because it meant you didn't have to bank on 10 Don Kuzan. In OP03, Whitebeard is still the best deck, so it goes without saying Lucci is the best Black leader, and he's the only Black leader doing anything at this point. I'm sure Smoker did things here or there, but 9 times out of 10, if a Black deck topped, it was going to be I was gonna say Sakazuki. My God, that's not true. That'd be the biggest lie. But no, it was Lucci. So before we move into OP04, we actually have I was gonna say a structure deck, but like I don't even know if we could really even consider it that. Considering, we'll just get into it. So we got Black. We got a new Black leader. We got a new mono Black leader. It is Luffy. This leader was cheeks. This leader was so ass. Oh my God, he was so bad. Up to this point, we've been discussing what Black does. Black is cost reduction, and Black is destruction. Luffy, if a character died, he would attach 1 Rested Dawn to himself, which is so random. First of all, that's a red thing. So why is Luffy doing that? And then also, it's because like there are now conditions on what it takes to attach. Like, you have to take into consideration, like 99% of the time, you're going to be attaching 1 Dawn to yourself, like at most that turn. On a real good turn, you might be attaching 2 to swing for 7, you know, hit that magic number. But you have to take into consideration, like, most of the time you're attaching 1 Dawn. That is an ability that is so not worth it. When you consider like a leader like Red Luffy, for example, just does it for free. When you consider that Bandai has gone ahead and shown us that the ability to attach 1 Rested Dawn is only worth 1 Dawn. Because we saw that in Dawn Nami from the Red structure deck. Like, That is not a conditional Nami is not good, especially too because it's like I don't know how you're ever attaching 3 Dawn, like, and even if you were attaching, it's like the payoff for all of this was just a big swing. Or not even a big swing. You were never going to get big enough that they had to spend more than like 2Ks to get out of it. Like, he just didn't do anything. I like genuinely believe that he is worse than Sakazuki, the first black leader. And this is supposed to be like with power creep, you know, like he's supposed to be better. But no, this leader was ass. And then also on top of it, we move into what the like new cards the structure deck introduced. The only good card from this structure deck was 4-cost Kobe. And 4-cost Kobe was basically an event because he wasn't surviving to the next turn. It was 4 Dawn, tap him, pitch a card, pop a card. Like it wasn't even like the best destruction, but it was more destruction. Like Black was doing everything in their power to have as much destruction as they could. So Kobe was you making the best with what you had. Honorable mentions. I'm gonna say 4-cost Shirahoshi. I've never seen this card do anything. I really haven't, but I do know that my friend is running it in a list, and I'm assuming it's probably because he saw that somewhere. So I assume this card must be seeing play somewhere. So I'll go ahead and mention it. The other card, Gum Gum Pistol. This card will probably never see play. However, I'm mentioning it because I have been cooking up Red Black Garp, and this card is basically, I think it's called Meteor Volcano, but searchable off of Nami. Nami has gained 2 new black targets she can search out. Those targets being 7-cost Dressrosa Luffy and King Kong Gun. So at that point, to make that win condition more consistent, you're obviously running a Nami searcher. And if you're going to be searching with Nami, you may as well at that point be running Gum Gum Pistol too, because realistically, it and Meteor Volcano cost the same amount. Only difference is it is now searchable off of Nami. We're not moving to OPO4. Oh, well, I guess before we do, but it's safe to say Black Luffy never did anything. Card was fucking awful. We now move into OPO4. So we gain 2 new leaders. Oh my god. So we gain Black Isho. Before this set came out, the highest of expectations. This leader is so good on paper. He has 2 different abilities. One of them is just a global lower everything by 1 cost, and then the other ability, just restand something 5 or lower. It's so good. To this day, I cannot make sense of why this leader... I can't make sense of why he's not good. Like, everything about him screams amazing. But in practice, it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't work. It's so inefficient. You're playing down a Dawn to restand. The 1 cost lower everything usually doesn't even matter. It's usually very unimpactful. But honestly, I don't even think the problem is even like the leader himself. Like realistically, I think the problem here was that Bandai they gave him nothing in OPO4. He gained literally nothing. Like, they just dropped a new leader and they were like, make it work. Like, they didn't even attempt to assist you. And the reason it's so upsetting is because then you look at our other black leader, and I will say, like, Isho, to the extent, he did so much nothing that the only, like, top he even has to his name is a store championship in Brazil. Like, that is literally, like, the amount of nothing Isho did in, like, North America, outside of Japan. It is bad. And even in Japan, he did nothing. Like, but the reason I say it's so upsetting is because I really do genuinely... I think it'd be so easy to make this leader good if they just gave him more good cards. If they gave him green Navy cards this set, I guarantee you this would have been a good leader. But they gave him nothing. They gave him quite literally 0 cards to play with. And then you look at the next black leader we got this set, Blue Black Rebecca. They gave her at least like 15 cards. They gave her so many cards. They did everything within their power to support this leader, and they just neglected Isho. So, our new black leader, Blue Black Rebecca, and when you give a leader this many new cards, and they're all good even, of course she's going to be good. So, we have 1 cost Rebecca, so not only does she come out, she immediately gets a searcher. She gets a searcher that fuels the discard pile. She also gets 1 cost Leo. So Leo's just popping things on 1 cost We also gained 3-cost Kyros. This has to be the best 3-cost character in the entire game. He's just a 3-cost character that unless you are playing blue, he's never leaving the board. He is so sticky that to the point that you pretty much just kind of have to accept that he's there and not even waste resources and attacks on attacking him. You accept that Rebecca has just established a 5k body to the board, and the downside of Rebecca is supposed to be that she can't attack, that she has no leader swing. Kyros eliminates that downside because he is the leader swing. She also gained 4-cost Orlumbus, so this is basically just Rosa's 4-cost Kuzan, but it's so much better. Kuzan had to survive a turn to even attempt to lure something by 4. Orlumbus just does it, and he does it for free too, because he's supposed to be popping something, but he isn't, because realistically, all you do is you say, I'm gonna pop my Kyros, and then Kyros taps the stage, and just like that, like it's so free. And then he also, like, for some reason, he's also fueling the discard pile. We also got 7-cost Luffy. This card is a win condition. This card is so good. This card it feels very mediocre. Like, you put him on the board, and he feels mediocre outside of Rebecca, because Rebecca being able to give him Rush makes him insane. It makes him so stupid. Outside of Rebecca, though, this character feels very, very subpar. And I can say that because I've been testing Red Black Garp, and I am running Luffy as my win condition. And let me tell you, when he cannot attack the turn he comes out, he is not nearly as strong, obviously, as he is in a deck that does give him Rush. Honestly, 7-cost Luffy wouldn't even be that crazy. I would say this card is even balanced if it weren't for a card like King Kong Gun existing. This card is actually fucking stupid. This card's broken. This card's just genuinely broken. 3-cost gains 6k, and then double attack. No, it's not broken. You don't just get double attack. Your discard pile has to be set up. You're playing Rebecca. The discard pile is always set up. It is so insane how broken this card is. Your Luffy just goes from 7 to 13 for literally no reason, and then has double attack. He, on his own, is hitting the leader and taking 4 of their life. This card is actually, like, if Luffy existed and King Kong Gun didn't, he'd be fine. King Kong Gun just breaks this character. Oh my god. She also got a blocker in 5-cost Sabo. Oh my, like, I just don't understand the power creep that is happening here. Black is just getting so overtuned all of a sudden. Sabo is a 5-cost blocker that is a draw 2, trash 2, so that's setting up the discard pile, and not only is he basically Borsalino's effect if he can't be KO'd, he's saying everything. He protects literally everything on the opponent's board. It's only for a turn, but usually that's all you really need. Then we move past the characters, we now are moving into the 2Ks. The 2Ks are also good. One of the 2Ks is basically just giving one of your Dressrosa characters Rush. The other 2K is a blocker. Like I don't understand what happened here. How does Rebecca gain all of this and Isho gains literally nothing? They gave that man, like, he was set up for failure. It's so, like, he was doomed. He was doomed from the start. Honorable mentions go to Barrier, which was basically Black gaining their Radical Beam, and Sword of Thunder, which is basically them gaining their Jet Pistol. The fact that these are only honorable mentions is insane. That's how good the color pool was for Black come OP04. Because Sword of Thunder, why would you ever play it when a card like 3000 Worlds exists? You skip Destruction altogether, you just bottom deck. So you can go into other Rebeccas, for example, and bottom deck their Sabo, you know? And then Barrier it is another tech of theirs, and it has the potential to be a Radical Beam with setup. But yeah, I don't know. Any other color would be so excited to be gaining their Radical Beam. Rebecca doesn't even play it half the time. That's just where we are. And yeah, Rebecca was a very, very, very good leader. She did phenomenal in Japan. She's doing great in America. Black started off good and has one of the best decks in OP04. Black was riches to riches. Like, Like, they never had a dull moment. Like, I would say their most underwhelming moment was probably OP03. And in OP03, they had like a leader that was supposed to counter like the best deck. So like Black never at any point were they fiending or neglected or needing more help. They've always been good. They've always been fine. And that is where Black is. Let me know what you want the next color to be, and I'll go ahead and get on that. And this is why I say, like, I just wasn't all that enthusiastic to even cover Black, because I feel like their story is so uninteresting. They never had, like, anything they had to overcome. There was never a hurdle. You know, Blue started out fucking abysmal. Purple got neglected to all hell. Green did nothing for all of OP02 because their leader just fell off because he died to Whitebeard. Red, on the opposite side of things, their problem was that they were just too good. They were tier 0. Like, Black's story is so uninteresting to me. They never did anything exceptional. They were never exceptionally bad. They were never exceptionally good. Like, they were always just a good color. But yeah, with that being said, until next time, let me know what color you guys want to see next. But take care.